Hey folks, my name is Kevin Kramer and thought I would make a video today on a Bing Slide carburetor for my BMW R50/5 1970 version of that, and I had a really hard time finding information about this particular carburetor, and there was a very small part that didn't find a lot of documentation on. So I hope this helps for those of you out there that might be looking for information on this. So in any case, I will reference a few things. I should call out that I am not by any means a professional mechanic. I have a couple of vintage bikes and I tinker around, and so some of the information may not be exactly correct, but it's based on my knowledge. So again, hopefully this helps for that. All right, so the first thing I wanted to do is take a look at the exploded view. I did find the same or a similar view online, but I'll dig into that in a minute. This is actually from the Climber manual, which I would highly recommend. I did not have this when I first started down this road of rebuilding these carbs, and it would have been tremendously helpful. Yeah, so that's the exploded view of this particular slide carb. I'll just try and pan out so you can see all of that. I do want to call attention to the areas that we're going to look at specifically, and that's in this case the main jet 21. Not actually going to do a whole lot with that, but just it'll be part of what I take apart. And then you have your needle jet and your needle jet holder, and then you have this piece here which is listed as the accelerator pump assembly. And the reality is this could actually be exploded itself because there's a number of parts in there. And so hopefully that was helpful before we jump in and actually look at the carb. And I'm going to try and do some one-handed stuff here and then transfer the view here in a second. But first things first, and I've already sort of unscrewed some of these parts. So this is one piece, but the main jet is here on the top. I'm going to take that part off. And inside the very end, there's actually a spring inside this body, and then there's another part in here that holds a very small piece that I had to replace, which is really what I wanted to show you. But before I do that, there is also inside this, I'm just going to turn this over and it'll fall out, and that is your needle jet holder. Oops, there it is. And so that orients, again, the bottom is the top side here, but that orients in that way. And then just makeshift camera holder here. If this is, again, this would be the float bowl side, and then this would be the top side of your carb. It sits freely inside the carburetor body, and then this piece would sit right on top of it. Again, there is a spring-loaded component in here, and so I'm going to take, this is a plastic, and you can hear probably when I push on this, I can push that in and out. It should move very freely, but there is a spring in here, and so I'm going to take the main jet off, and you need to be really careful because that spring, once you hit that last thread, and I'm trying to show it here, we'll want to pop that off. And one, you don't want to lose your main jet, and you certainly don't want to lose the spring. There it is. I'm going to go ahead and pull that out. And then inside here, and this particular side needs a little tap and a little love, which I'm going to try and get that to move a little bit freer. you have this component, which is part of that accelerator pump assembly. And the way that that orients, just so you can see that, would be the 4 holes would be on that side. And then inside here is really what I want to show most of all. It's a part that I ordered from Benchmark Works, and I'll show you the products here in a second on that invoice. But it was called the Bing Accelerator Pump Internal Sealing Disc. As I take this part off, which is part of that needle jet, there is a little piece in there. You see that little white disc? It restricts flow one way, but allows it in the other way. And the one that I took off was not working. And it took me a long time to figure that out. And I couldn't find any videos that took this apart and helped, so here we are creating one. So that disc goes into the accelerator pump assembly. I don't think there's an orientation. If somebody knows that there is, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I think that piece that I just screwed on is technically the pilot jet, maybe. I may have some of these parts wrong. Again, I'm learning as I go along. And then to put that back on, you have the needle jet holder. And that just, again, free form goes in, but I found if you sort of jiggle that around, it'll seat in there. And then orientation wise, sorry, that's blocking a little bit of the light. The 4 holes go, in this case, down. Put that in, push it down, make sure that it's seated. Really shouldn't be. The other side is a lot freer, so I've got to try and figure out what's going on there. But that piece goes in, and then you have your spring, and then your main jet, and the main jet holder gets screwed on like so. And back on to the carburetor you go. And so I mainly wanted to show you that sealing disc and some of the other components in that accelerator pump assembly, because it's not broken out in the manual. Again, I had a hard time finding documentation and or videos that showed this. So hopefully that was helpful. And a shout out to the fellas at Benchmark Works. Super helpful. They were able to answer a whole lot of questions and tell me I needed a whole bunch of other stuff for other things I needed to do on my bike. But the 2 things that I did order on this case were the Bing Accelerator Pump internal springs. That spring that we showed was brand new, and that sealing disc, that little white sealing disc, you know, those were a couple of bucks, $3 a piece, I think it was. You know, and hopefully that'll solve some of the challenges that I'm having with that. But anyway, hopefully this video was helpful, and that you have good riding ahead.